and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, María Roa, and I am delighted to be joined by Jackie Janeri. Jackie is a seasoned manager with a demonstrated work history in the localization industry and an extensive experience and expertise in the field of life sciences localization. She has a proven track record leading successful initiatives in multilingual content management, translation best practices, account and relationship management, linguistic validation, e-learning, and transcreation. Jackie's insights and leadership in life sciences have made her a respected authority in the field, and I am very honored to have her here with us to share her wealth of knowledge and experience. Jackie, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for hosting me.
No, thanks for being here. Well, I do have quite a few questions, so I hope you're ready.
I certainly am. Thank you.
No problem. I always tend to ask to my guests, how did they end up in the localization industry? And if they did know about it before they started working on it, because for example, for me, that was a surprise. I didn't even know this industry existed, So how was it for you?
Well, surprisingly, the same. I didn't plan on a career in localization. I come from a medical family, and throughout my childhood, I thought I would be in medicine somehow, because I have a deep interest in anatomy and physiology, but I'm also very squeamish. And I didn't really think as I got older that I would thrive in a clinical environment. Instead, I wanted to do something with an international focus. So I think really the turning point for me when I was 16, I had a life-changing trip to Tunisia, and it made me want to work specifically with the United Nations. And in fact, somewhere I have a photo of me standing outside the UN building in Vienna. So I went to university several years later, and I studied German and political science with that goal in mind. But as soon as I finished my studies, I ended up participating in a graduate program that took me to Taiwan instead. And I studied Chinese and taught English at a local university. And then eventually I made my way down to Hong Kong, where I stayed a few more years working with an international school. So eventually I moved back to the US, and I was planning to pursue a master's in education, but got this opportunity to work with a small translation agency in Chicago, and I took it. And it completely changed my career path. Localization, I have to say, really turned out to be the perfect fit for me. And though it's not the UN, I get to work with people around the globe. I practice diplomacy at times. I'm still handling medical content, which I find interesting and dynamic. And more importantly, being in life sciences, I get to do work that is impactful and potentially life-changing for somebody else. And that has always been really, really important to me. So I've been in the industry now for nearly 2 decades, and the last 10 years have been solely focused on life sciences. And I really love what I do, and I love language. So again, a perfect fit.
Yeah, it is a perfect fit indeed. And it is funny that you come from a medical life sciences background family and you didn't want to be attached to it at first. I mean, you didn't exactly want it to do something related with it at first, but here you are working in life sciences, being an expert on it. So since you know so much about it, can you let us know what are the unique challenges and considerations involved in localization life sciences content? Because I guess it is not the same life sciences that any other content.
Right, exactly. I think the biggest consideration in localizing life sciences content, as opposed to any other types of content that we handle, is really patient safety, full stop. All that we do, Maria, all the documented processes we put in place have to ensure that accurate deliverable. So the translation programs, of course, then have to include some type of risk management and mitigation. One of the best ways to mitigate risk, of course, is to have the right qualified resources assigned to every step of the process. We also have to have documented processes in place and really robust quality assurance steps built into our workflow that are ISO compliant to ensure that we have an accurate deliverable to ensure that patient safety. So it's just a much more rigid process overall. And I think really kind of, you were talking about unique challenges. I think when we're dealing with localizing life sciences content, it's that strict adherence to the source text. You know, unlike marketing translations where linguists can take a little bit more creative liberty or even transcreate the content, life sciences or regulated content really must remain true to the source for regulatory reasons. So really there's very little room for deviation. And at times we even have to educate client in-country reviewers on the risk of deviating from that source. So essentially we act as the gatekeeper of that content to make sure that it is accurate and mirroring the source. So again, how does life sciences localization differ from the types of content that we localize for other markets or other industries? It really comes down to risk management, regulatory compliance, and a robust quality assurance measures that all adhere to those ISO standards.
Yeah, because as you said, everything, it's like we need to do it having the patient in mind as the center of everything you guys do. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's really complex documentation. So it involves a wide range of like, I don't know, clinical study reports, research plans, all that it needs to be very carefully looked at.
Mhm.
Well, that was super interesting. Thank you so much. How do you approach the localization of highly regulated life sciences content? Because that's what we're talking about. I mean, like you just mentioned all these super complex documentation that you need to translate, taking into account a regulatory compliance, you know, taking into account cultural sensitivity, language diversity, I don't know, even cost management. I guess that's also something that you always need to take into account. So how do you approach this?
Well, as I mentioned before, having documented repeatable processes for operational consistency is a must. Having that quality management system, a QMS, is imperative for that regulated content. And we need all of that for traceability. There should always be an audit trail on a project. So if something comes up, you know, things happen, we have to go back and look at what we've done and the process that we followed. There's an audit trail for that. Internal and external audits, of course, help to monitor that compliance to those standards. It's just a way to check to make sure that we're following through with the defined processes that we have in place. So, again, quality management system is imperative. Repeatable processes for operational consistency is imperative. From an accuracy perspective, when we ensure that we utilize linguistic talent. Again, I mentioned having the right resources on the job. Those resources have to have a deep understanding of the subject matter in their target market. And they have to have the education, the training, the experience to support the work that we're assigning to them. And then of course, on the client side of things, at client onboarding, one of the first things we do is assess the linguistic assets we may be inheriting from a legacy supplier. You know, in the case of someone switching suppliers or adding us as one of their preferred suppliers, we always kind of vet that those assets that we're receiving to make sure that the quality is there. And then in terms of assets, if they don't have assets in place, the first thing we do is build them and we maintain them to keep the translations consistent and compliant with the client's company specific or preferred terminology. And then finally, with changing regulations all the time, we encourage continuous education and training for our linguists and the support teams at Vistatec.
Oh my God. So I think you mentioned lots of things like quality control, to have like expert teams, I think you mentioned, continuous education, you said, Yeah, lots of things to take into attention whenever you're working with a life sciences regulated content. In your experience, what are the key factors that contribute to a successful life sciences localization strategy, especially when dealing with a specialized medical or technical terminology?
Hmm. Well, one of the key factors to a successful localization strategy, whether it's for life sciences or any industry, really is having strong communication through well-defined communication channels. I mean, communication is key. As a first step, it's really important to have the customer communicate their localization goals and priorities so that we can map out a program that can help achieve those goals. If we don't do this as a first step, there is the risk of misalignment. That's really problematic. For example, the client may need to meet a submission deadline. So timeline or schedule is their highest priority, and that's really important for us to know. And knowing this up front allows us to possibly scale up resources that we're using or streamline a process to reduce turnaround time. So it's really important that they share that upfront. We also need to define how we will be communicating with the client and the cadence of the communication. Some clients really want to be informed at all times. Others really only want to be informed if there's a risk or a change to the program or a change to the timeline. Otherwise, they're happy to wait, for the project delivery. That happens occasionally. So it's really important to understand all of that upfront. And I think too, another key factor is having that strong asset strategy in place. As I mentioned, in a new program, we assess it. We assess those assets, those glossaries, the term bases, style guides that we're getting. And again, we look at what we have to do there in terms of either enhancing them or updating them. And we need to make sure that we can use them without risk.
Again, we're talking about seriously, this life sciences localization seems like a continuous work on learning, continuous work on adaptation. You always have to be careful of quality assurance and, as you mentioned, communication, right?
Exactly. I really think communication is key. It really sets the whole program up for success.
Yeah, at the end, effective communication between all parties, including clients, translators, regulatory experts, and all that, it's essential for a cohesive strategy, right?
Exactly.
Okay, that's great. Could you discuss a specific example where effective life sciences localization has had a significant impact on the market entry or success of a product in a specific region? Because I know you're particularly proud of seeing how all the work that we do behind gets, in front of the people and how that converts into what we actually do. So if you could give us an example, that'd be great.
Localization is only one part of an organization's global content strategy. And we often don't see the true impact of our work on patient care because it's really not a formal part of a client's feedback loop. Having said that, several years ago, I was invited to an on-site meeting with one of my large respiratory acute care clients. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to tour the manufacturing facility and to see how the devices were made on the assembly line and how they were packaged up for distribution. And I was taken to the station that had the printed instructions for use that my team had recently translated. And it was great to see the final product. And it really made an impression on me because it was real. I could see it in action. I could see it being packaged up and being ready to be sent out to clinicians and patients. And it showed me how important our translation is to the proper use of the device and to the treatment of the patient, and really to the patient's outcome, whether it's successful or not. And my client emphasized that those instructions for use, they were a true part of their deliverable, a packaged component of the device. And without it, they could not sell into the market. So it had to be there, and it had to be accurate for the sake of the patient. And so, though we're only one step in the overall process, it really showed me that our work is truly impactful. So that was really impressive. And again, interesting to see. Going back to your question on significant impact on market entry or success in a region, yes, we can and have made significant impacts on global market entry, especially when we're brought into discussions early on in a company's global strategy. We're currently working with a company who offers mental health solutions and advocacy to companies as a benefit to their employees globally. And when we launched their program, 2 clear objectives were established with them. They told us they want us to help them be first to market with their product and to help them kind of desensitize mental health by creating content that uses positive, inclusive language around mental health. And how did we achieve that? We created market-specific style guidelines, which included inclusive language. We created extensive glossaries. We assigned linguists who had a mental health translation background. And through strong communication and collaboration, we set up aggressive, agile production schedules to meet the release dates that they needed without compromising any of the quality steps that we have in place. So it was really effective. And we exceeded their expectation. We were able to deliver a little bit ahead of schedule.
Well, congratulations on that. It looks like the factors that you were mentioning before, they were used into this specific case, because you were talking about like having an expert in mental health, which is something we did mention, like having expertise in subject matter, communication as a base, because you did started talking very early in the process and knew exactly what were the objectives of the client. So congratulations for such a great project.
Thank you.
And we are almost coming to the end. I hope this wasn't too hard for you, but I do have one more question that I want to ask. And that one, it is about the future of life sciences. So with the rapid advancements in life sciences and medical technology, how do you see the future of life sciences localization evolving to meet the changing needs of global organizations?
The reality is life sciences is and will continue to be very fluid. Regulatory requirements can shift quickly. And we saw this during the pandemic. EU MDR compliance dates got pushed out, and there was this rapid shift in governing bodies regarding decentralized trials and remote patient data. So I think the key is to really be as agile as possible and adjust to product strategies, as those regulations are shifting. We also need to continue to evaluate and utilize new technologies like AI or neural MT, speech recognition, other content management tools to really help us meet the challenging needs for our customers.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much, Jackie. We came to the end. So thank you for everything. That's the end of today's show, people, with Jackie Janeri. Please make sure to tune in again to see or to listen to the new VistaTalks show, where we will be discussing more interesting topics with interesting people from all around the world. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you.